quit your toxic job and you'll be fine, right? The truth is, toxic jobs have aftermaths. And simply carrying on after you leave your toxic job as though nothing ever happened to you is setting yourself up to suffer, and maybe even to find yourself in toxic company after toxic company after toxic company. Well, you see where I'm going here. Hello, my career bestie, and if you are new here, welcome to my channel for videos about toxic workplace survival and recovery and success after a toxic workplace. Tap the subscription button and the notification bell. I release at least one new video each week. Grab your tea because it is toxic workplace story time. After surviving a toxic workplace myself and working with countless people who have done just the same, I realized the lasting impacts that they have. And while awareness and conversation about toxic workplaces is increasing in awareness, like in BuzzFeed articles and stuff like that, what isn't being discussed is the aftermath of a toxic workplace and how they can hurt your well-being, your career, and your bank account. In today's video, I'm going to break down the common problems that I see of toxic workplace escapees and how you can work around those obstacles. If that all sounds good to you, if you are ready, tap that like button and let's just jump straight into it. The first toxic workplace side effect is that it can raise false alarms. Essentially what happens when you are surviving in or have survived a toxic workplace is your toxic workplace detector gets totally out of whack. Our brains spot patterns. That means when we see action, consequence, our brain is going to draw an inference about what's going to happen next. What this means is that if any even surface level toxic behavior exists, alarm bells ring. For example, have you ever gotten a meeting booking from your boss where the reason for the meeting wasn't clear? If you're like most people, panic immediately ensues. Why is that? Because at some point in your career, that meaning that you didn't know what the purpose was because you were going to get in trouble, you were being laid off, some bad event occurred. And now when your brain sees that meeting from your boss with no topic, it automatically equates back to that bad event. And that sends us into a stress response. The same thing happens with really any adverse event in our life. Like a few months ago when it had snowed in New York City, the sidewalks in my area were really icy. And I fell. And after that happened, I was really nervous to go out because I thought if there was ice, I would fall. Your brain connects this information for you. However, just because your brain has connected that event with a pattern, it doesn't mean that it's valid. And this is where we need to get into perceived versus real danger. Just because your brain senses potential danger doesn't mean that any actual danger exists. I've seen this one recently with someone that I was working with. She had been in a toxic work environment where discrimination was just running rampant. And while she is in process of landing her next opportunity, she's very, very sensitive to any potential gender discrimination. Her brain is now hyper aware of the warning signs because she has experienced the negative effects. Is it valid? Maybe sometimes it is. But one of the things that we have been working on together is to help identify and assess where those danger signals are being fired off to see if the threat is real. Is it an actual red flag or is it a perceived threat? In those instances where our brain is going into protection mode and activating, the good news is that recalibration is completely possible. And I'll tell you the process that I've been going through with this client because I think that it might help you. In situations where she has detected a perceived threat, the red flags are there, the first thing that we do is we bring awareness to the situation and we name it as a perceived threat. Then we objectively talk through the situation to determine the actual threat level. Is it really a sign of a toxic workplace? Or is it just someone's quirky personality? Simply having awareness to the sensitivity is actually going to bring you a long way in terms of recalibrating your brain and not detecting danger everywhere or when you see those same toxic workplace behaviors. And actually, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever noticed yourself really quickly picking up on certain toxic behaviors or toxic workplace patterns after you have left a toxic workplace? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that, I would like to actually move into the next aftermath of a toxic workplace, and that is an impact to your confidence. I do not care if you think you're the most confident person in the world. In fact, I thought I was the most confident person in the world. I thought I was completely unshakable by any external influence or opinions. And I was wrong. Most toxic workplaces are going to include things like narcissistic bosses, malicious gossip, unfair criticism, and other malicious behaviors. And while any of these things as a 1 off, maybe a 2 off, even a 5 off might not matter. Existing for a sustained period of time in that toxic work environment is going to have an implication in your confidence and maybe even your self-worth. And I'm not saying that as a professional, you are just going to have no confidence and think you're totally worthless and that no one would ever hire you again. I mean, you might have those worries, but you also might not. How this actually translated for me in the aftermath of my toxic work experience was that I was insecure in very specific work situations. In my toxic work situation, my toxic boss exploited the fact that I overthought every single decision that I made and would really make me question it. And what this did was this created insecurity about the quality of the decisions that I was making. Was I thinking about it enough? Was I taking the full picture into consideration? And while logically speaking, the answer was absolutely yes. There was never at any point any valid reason to question my decision making. I had an impeccable track record. However, after leaving the toxic work environment, this pattern did continue into my next job. And when discussing decisions with my new manager, I brought a lot of insecurities and even started deferring decision making to him in some capacity. That did not do me any favors in making a good first impression at my new job. Here's the thing, toxic workplaces, by their very structure and concept, are going to have implications in your confidence. They will make you doubt yourself and your awesomeness. If they didn't, they wouldn't be toxic. And here's the scary thing that really is a double-edged sword for those of you that are in a toxic work environment or have recently escaped a toxic work environment and are looking for your next opportunity. If you don't address this impact to confidence, it can have disastrous results for your career and your bank account. So let's dig into that toxic workplace side effect and the fact that a toxic workplace can impact your next opportunity and your income. Yes, even when you quit your toxic job. I have spoken with so many people who've been in a toxic workplace, my friends over on LinkedIn, and a ton of you here in the comments. And there's something that I consistently hear when people are leaving a toxic workplace. I'll have to take a pay cut, or I'll take what I can get. And when you're in a toxic workplace, this honestly is such an awful catch-22 because toxic workplaces decrease your confidence, as we just discussed. But you need confidence in your job search to land the right opportunity and to get paid for the value that you bring to that next opportunity. The lower your confidence is, the bigger the struggle is going to be to get both of those things in order. And so many times, just out of desperation in the job search or just to get out of their toxic workplace as quickly as possible, I have seen people who have taken jobs that they were overqualified for, or where they were being underpaid because they didn't feel valuable. And I am going to come back to that one in just a minute, so stay with me. Whether it is finding your next opportunity, being paid a top salary in order to do that job, or even succeeding in the new job that you have once you leave your toxic workplace, confidence is absolutely crucial. It bends reality. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Confidence is contagious. And when you have a high level of self-confidence, other people are going to feel confident in you. And this will actually change their entire perception of you at work. This is such a big problem that I'm actually going to release a new program called Toxic Job Detox. And it's really designed to help you rebuild your confidence, process what happened to you in the toxic workplace, and break the patterns so that you don't just survive in your next job, so that you can establish a thriving career after a toxic workplace. To celebrate its launch, I am going to be having a free event, and there's going to be some special early bird offers. If you want to be the first to know about this exciting new program and to get some exclusive offers in your inbox, go to toxicjob.com and sign up for the waitlist. And actually that brings me directly into my next point about the aftermath of a toxic workplace, and that is toxic patterns. And this is a really important part of the new program, but I don't want to lock it away. I want you guys working on it right now. So let's start here. When you are in a toxic work environment, you acquire coping mechanisms in order to survive. Those coping mechanisms are going to be behaviors that help you minimize conflict with your boss, avoid drama with your coworkers, and things along those lines. For me, one of those toxic habits was actually over-communicating. As I shared, the manager that I was working with had a tendency to over-critique in order to make me feel less secure and maybe even portray me as being less competent at my job. job, the coping mechanism that I acquired was to communicate the reason and the logic behind the decisions I was making before he even asked. And because this was a subconscious coping mechanism that I developed, when I went into my next job, that behavior continued occurring. And what ended up happening? My new boss now established this as the baseline of communication, so when I realized I don't really need to be doing this anymore, it had actually created this toxic pattern of overcommunication, and we needed to course correct. The most common toxic behavior that I see, and I also fell prey to when I was in a toxic work environment, is complaining. Whether it's complaining to your coworkers over coffee, bitching to your friends after work, or like me, a nightly rant session to your spouse about how miserable you are at work, complaining is a bad habit to have. And because complaining can become a habit as you use it as a coping mechanism in a toxic workplace, you might end up continuing to spot all those bad things and complaining even when you exit the toxic work environment. And that negative focus, negative lens, and culture of complaining can actually, again, frame a toxic work environment for you where a toxic work environment would not exist otherwise. And even if it doesn't, complaining is just going to make you miserable. So what can you do with these toxic habits that you've acquired? Well, first of all, you need to spot the toxic patterns. This might be easy, like you might be like, yeah, I'm probably complaining a little bit too much these days. Or it might be harder to spot, like my overcommunication with my boss. However, you need to do the work here to find it. And then it's a matter of adjusting those habits. So there's two different things that you can do here. You can stop the habit, so habit cessation, just like, I'm just not gonna complain anymore. But what is typically most effective is going to be habit swapping. This is actually my favorite way to integrate better habits. And the more that you can actually integrate success habits in the place of those toxic habits, the better off you're gonna be. I have a whole video on success habits, but just for example, if we look at complaining, instead of complaining every day after work, why not express things that were awesome about the day or something that you learned? Not only are these things going to make you happier at work, which you deserve, especially when you have survived a toxic workplace, these are going to be things that elevate your career. And that actually brings me now to the $500,000 mistake you might be making. In the aftermath of a toxic workplace, many toxic workplace survivors scale back their ambition. Because you've been in this survival stress mode, it's like, I just want to have a job I go to and leave at the end of the day and isn't problematic. They stop wanting to excel in their career. They stop wanting to get promotions. They stop wanting to grow as a professional. And this can be a direct result of trauma experienced in a toxic workplace. And look, if climbing the corporate ladder and having the American dream isn't for you, totally cool. You need to define success on your own terms and live it. But if you are someone who had career ambitions, it might just be that you're not giving yourself permission to want these things, or they might feel unattainable, or it might just be another coping mechanism designed to help protect you from a potentially toxic work environment. And if that's the case, you need to work through it to release it. This doesn't just impact your job title, it actually impacts your bank account. With one of my clients, we actually future tracked her earning potential and promotion path over the course of 10 years. Option 1, she did nothing and just kind of skated along. Option 2, she rebuilt her confidence, found a job that paid her better than her toxic job, and got her onto the promotion path. And the difference in her earning potential just over those 10 years was $500,000. Now, I'm not saying that's what it's going to be for you. It might be higher, it might be lower. But even if you are settling and the next job that you take after you escape a toxic workplace, and you're taking that pay hit because you don't feel very good about yourself, that is showing up in your bank account and it compacts over time. Once you've escaped a toxic workplace, we need to get you out of survival mode in your career and into thrival mode. So if you haven't already, I definitely recommend that you check out the resources that are going to be coming out with my new program or even the program itself. But if there's one thing that you do today that can actually immediately have an impact and is a great success habit for you to start forming, that is to practice daily gratitude. A gratitude practice is not only going to help you be positive at work, increase your confidence, it's even going to make you more resilient if you are still in a toxic workplace. If you don't have a gratitude practice and you don't know where to start, go and check out this video right now where I break it all down for you. But before you go, if this video helped you, if it helped you figure out what you need to kind of deal with after leaving a toxic workplace, give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel and it makes you my favorite career bestie. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and I will see you in the next video, my friend. Bye for now.